Hi, my name is Lily Rose Simon, and this is my 1.3 cardiovascular system assignment. So, first thing we're going to be talking about is the functions of the cardiovascular system, and this involves the nutrients delivery, protection from infection, the transportation of oxygen, clotting, waste products removal, and thermoregulation. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is the transportation of nutrients. So the cardiovascular system acts as an internal road network, and this is where linking all the different parts of the body via a system of highways, which are the arteries and the veins. And you could also say that the arterioles and the venules act as main roads. So this sort of network allows a non-stop system of the blood to deliver the nutrients, gases, the waste products, and send messages throughout the body. And the nutrients such as glucose from the digested carbohydrate are delivered from the digestive tract to the muscles and the organs that require them for energy. The cardiovascular system works in conjunction with the respiratory system to deliver the oxygen to the tissues of the body and to remove the carbon dioxide. And hormones, which are chemical messengers from the endocrine glands, are transported by the cardiovascular system as well. So the pulmonary circuit is made up of the lungs, the heart, the pulmonary veins, and the pulmonary arteries. So in order to do this effectively, the cardiovascular system is divided into two different circuits, known as the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. And this circuit pumps the deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs, where it becomes oxygenated and returns back to the heart. So now we're moving on to protection from infection. And this is where we talk about the blood containing three different types of blood cells. So we have red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. So the first cells we're going to be talking about are red blood cells. So these red blood cells are responsible for the transportation of the oxygen around the body to the tissues and the organs that need it. So as the oxygen enters the bloodstream through the alveoli of the lungs, it binds to a special protein in the red blood cells called hemoglobin. So now we're going to be talking about white blood cells. And so the job of the white blood cells is to detect a foreign body or infection and to kill them. So when they detect and kill an infection, they create antibodies for that particular infection. And this enables the immune system to act more quickly against the foreign bodies or infections it has come into contact with them previously. And now moving on to platelets, which also can work together with clotting. So the excessive blood loss can be fatal. So this is why people with a condition known as haemophilia. So low levels of or absence of platelets need sort of medication. Otherwise, even if you have a minor cut, it can sort of become fatal as the bleeding will continue without the scab being formed, which is due to the clotting. And so platelets connect to fibrinogen, and this means that they stick to foreign particles or objects, such as edges on a cut. So platelets are cells which are responsible for the clotting of the blood, and a protein which is released in the site of the cut produces the clump of blood that blocks the whole of the broken blood vessel. So on an outer wound, this sort of becomes a scab. So if the body has a low level of platelets, then the clotting may not occur, and then therefore the bleeding will continue. So if the platelet levels are excessively high, then clotting within blood vessels can occur, leading to a stroke or even a heart attack. So this is sort of why the history of cardiac problems are often prescribed medication to keep the blood thin and to minimize the risk of clotting within the blood vessels. So lastly, we're going to be moving on to thermoregulation. And this is when the sensory receptors, or the thermoreceptors, so this process is a temperature regulation known as thermoregulation, and the cardiovascular system plays a big part. So when the temperature changes within the body, there is detected by the sensory receptors, or called the thermoreceptors, which then relay the information about these changes in the hypothalamus in the brain. So when a deviation in temperature or a change in temperature occurs, the hypothalamus then will react by initiating a certain mechanism in order to regain a safe temperature again. So, and then there are 4 different types of sites where these changes in temperature can occur. So these are in the sweat glands. So these glands will secrete the sweat on the outer surface of the skin when either the blood or the skin temperature is detected to be above a normal temperature. Also, the smooth muscle around the arterioles will increase in temperature, which results in the smooth muscle in the walls of the arterioles being stimulated to relax, which causes vasodilation, which is the increase of the diameter of the vessel. So this increases the volume of blood flow to the skin, which allows cooling of the skin to occur. And then if, however, the thermoreceptors detect a cooling of the blood or the skin, then the hypothalamus will react by sending a message to the smooth muscle of the arterial walls, which causes the arterioles to vasoconstrict, which means that they reduce their diameter, and this reducing of the diameter reduces the blood flow to the skin and therefore helps to maintain the body temperature. Also, the skeletal muscles are one of the points where it changes temperature. So when a drop in the blood temperature is recorded by the hypothalamus, this can react by causing the skeletal muscles to start shivering. And this shivering is where the muscles move very fast together and create small muscular contractions, which produces the heat to help warm up the blood. And lastly, endocrine glands, which happens by the hypothalamus may trigger to release the hormones such as thyroxine, adrenaline, and noradrenaline in response to the drop in the blood temperature. And all these different types of hormones contribute to increasing the body's metabolic rate, which is the rate at which the body burns fuel, so therefore it increases the production of heat. So these are the different 4 types. This is just sort of an overview. So they secrete sweat in the sweat glands, which allows the heat to be lost through evaporation. The smooth muscle around the arterioles is stimulated to relax, causing vasodilation. The endocrine glands releases a hormone which contributes to the increasing of the body's metabolic rate and therefore will produce more heat. And lastly, the skeletal muscles create a muscular contraction, which is the shivering, which produces the heat. So then we're going to be moving on to the transportation of oxygen. So this oxygen-rich blood is pumped through the heart into the arterial circulation. So in the capillaries, oxygen diffuses out of the blood and into the cells of the other body's organs and tissues. And at the same time, carbon dioxide, which is a waste product by the cells, is absorbed into the blood and transported to the lungs through the venous system. So when the oxygen poor blood reaches the lungs, the carbon dioxide diffuses through the air sacs and is exhaled. And this cycle occurs every time we breathe. So here shows the oxygenated blood going from the lungs into the heart and out to the muscles, and this shows the deoxygenated blood going through the heart and back up to the lungs. So now we're moving on to the 2 different types of circulations. So we have the pulmonary circuit, and this circuit carries carbon dioxide rich blood back from the heart back to the lungs and then back up again. And then we have the systemic circulation, which transports oxygen rich blood from the heart and back to the rest of the body. So that's that one. So this just shows the pulmonary circuit and just shows where, so the red here is the oxygen rich blood and the blue is the deoxygenated blood. So then we show you the systemic circuit. And so the systemic circulation is the movement of the blood from the heart through the body to provide oxygen and nutrients and bringing the deoxygenated blood back to the heart. So the oxygen-rich blood from the lung leaves the pulmonary circulation, which enters the left atrium through the pulmonary veins, and then this blood is pumped back up through the mitral valve into the left ventricle, which is here. And from the left ventricle, the blood is pumped through the aortic valve and into the aorta. So the body's, which is the body's largest artery. So the aorta arches and branches into the major arteries to the upper body before passing through the diaphragm. And this is where the branches further into the arteries, which supply the lower parts of the body. So the arteries branch into smaller arteries and arterioles, and then finally go smaller again into capillaries. So here we just show you the heart anatomy. So here the heart contains 4 different types of chambers. The 2 upper chambers, which is the right atrium and the left atrium, and then you have the 2 lower chambers, which are the right ventricle and the left ventricle. And the atria are smaller than the ventricles and have thinner and less muscular walls than the ventricles. And the atria act as receiving chambers for the blood, so they are connected to the veins that carry the blood to the heart. And the ventricles are larger and stronger pumping chambers that send blood out of the heart, and the ventricles are connected to the arteries that carry the blood away from the heart. So the chambers on the right side of the heart are smaller and have less myocardium in the heart wall when compared to the left side of the heart. And this difference is because of the size, because it's related to their functions, and to the size of the circulatory loops. So the right side of the heart maintains the pulmonary circulation, which is nearby the lungs, while the left side of the heart pumps blood all the way round the body in the systemic circulatory system. So this is another picture of the heart anatomy. So these leaflets of the atrioventricular valves are connected to the fibrous tissue called the chordinae tendineae, which are attached to the papillary muscles. And the contraction and relaxation of these muscles allow the valves to open and close. So this here is the papillary muscles, and here are the chordinae tendineae. And so the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve are also called semi-ulnar valves, and also the lub-dub sound that you hear with the heartbeat is also made by the opening and closing of these valves. So the thickness of the walls in the 4 heart chambers varies from their functions. So the walls of the atria are thinner than the ventricle walls. This is due to the blood only needing to be pumped into the ventricles, and the left ventricle pumps blood at a further distance and at a higher pressure, so therefore the wall of the left ventricle is thicker than the right side than the right ventricle.